You are listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Other co-hosts you may have seen, maybe not recently, maybe, I don't know, coming out of Barber Lounge 459 with a big old smile on his face, Mr. Scott Bowie.
What's going on, Aaron?
Not a whole lot. It's been a month or two since we've done one of these, so
Yep.
we're not giving up. So people think if we're folding over or anything, we're not.
Nope. Got a lot of other stuff happening.
A lot of stuff happening. Life happens.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, no, we're still doing podcasts and keeping up with the trying to keep up with some of the video stuff that I do. And yeah, no, it's been good.
Yep, I agree.
But yeah, make sure if you haven't, make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast also on YouTube as well. Apple Podcast, Spotify, anywhere else where our podcast can be found. So this show today, I joke with them because honestly, we should have had him on a long time ago, and I don't know why we didn't, and I do apologize to him for that. Geoff Dodge, who good friend of mine and good friend of the show. He's been in a couple, well, at least he was in one of our Fast Times videos. And he was in our Pro-Am race as well.
Yeah, Geoff, man, of
You've
course
known
you
him
know
for a
this.
while too. Yeah.
I've met Geoff. Whatever year it was, he won the scholarship to run Indy Lights. He was back to Indianapolis. He walks into my shop, and that's how I kind of got to meet him. I don't know Geoff that well. I mean, we would talk and that, but he was not so much. He was more into wing racing, which there wasn't a lot of back here at the time. He would run some non-wing, but I didn't really get a chance to watch him race very much. But it's somebody I've always enjoyed talking to. I like Geoff, self-driven guy. And it was nice to see him. It was nice to talk to him on the show. It's nice to see him getting a race a little bit again. He took, like a lot of people, he started his own business, and it takes a lot to do that.
Yeah.
And he's now kind of getting to the position where he can race a little bit again and fund his passion a bit. And so, no, it's really good talking to him.
Yeah, and I've been helping him out with like the video stuff, which has been great. It's really cool, like being a part of a team, even though if it's in a very small capacity. But just being involved and just seeing everything that goes into it. Like you said, the cool thing with Geoff is that, I mean, he funds his racing. Obviously, he has partners, but he owns a business, and it allows him to help fund his racing, which I think is great. I think, and I mentioned this in the interview, but it's kind of in a way, really the embodiment of the American dream, right? Like kind of creating your own destiny and working to live your dreams.
Yeah, and as you'll find out listening to this, not only is he uh, living his dream, but he's trying to find other people who maybe don't know what their dream
Yeah,
is,
absolutely.
and who may be interested in like what he does for a living, and kind of make that their passion. So he's really working toward. He has a construction company, lack of a better term, general
Excavating.
term, yeah, excavating company, and he said, like so many people say, the hardest part's getting workers. Well, now he's trying to develop a pipeline for that, and reaching out to different partners and that sort of thing. So hopefully that works well for him. I think that's good. I think that's something we need.
Yeah.
As the schools don't push the trades very much. Oddly enough, it's the trades where a lot of the money is. It's just not where a lot of the bank loans are for the student loans, but that's a whole nother subject for a whole different type of podcast. But no, Jeff's doing a great job there, and I think for anybody who's interested in self-made people, Geoff Dodge, I think is your guy.
Oh, absolutely. And he just raced this past weekend at Lincoln Park in Putnamville. Had- Raced very, very well. Won the dash, so he started on the pole. And then just racing incidents happen. But yeah, I mean, he made a hell of a pass. You saw the pass that he made to lead the dash. So
Yep, no, it was great.
yeah, no,
No,
he's
he's got talent. I
great. Yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
it's just like anything else. It's just he's just trying to do it for as long as he can, and, man, I take my hat off to him.
Well, I will say Sammy Swindell is 68 and he's still racing, so
Right, he's got just got a few years left.
absolutely, definitely. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of racing news probably since we since we last did one of these, but
Yeah. Yeah, I
um
mean, IndyCars ran St. Louis last week. Controversial finish there. That seems to be, getting more and more the when you see Joseph Newgarden win a race,
controversial.
controversy seems to be, following him, although I will say that at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, his pass on Pato was absolutely
Oh,
unbelievable,
can't
and
deny
he
that.
deserved that 1,000,000,000%. Like, I was somebody who as much as I disliked last year's finish, this year's finish, he deserved every bit of the accolation he gets. What else going on? Our friend of our show, Jagger Jones, has been on a tear in LMP3 in the VP Racing Challenge. He has won 5 races officially, although there was a 6th win that was taken away by a technical issue, unfortunately. But hey, rules are rules. They were 1 millimeter off, and they got caught. And he lost the win there. That was one of the races in Canada, but he did come back and win the next day. So he's won 5 of the 6 races. He's won this year. He races at VIR Virginia this weekend. So this is the week of the 25th. So he'll race this weekend there. He'll actually be doing double duty in the MX5 Cup and um, LMP3 VP Series. So best wishes to him there. His cousin Jimmy has started racing. Jimmy is Paige's son. He's back in the Midwest running go karts in the Ignite Series. He's over in. He's been staying in St. Louis with some family, with a friend of his that he met go karting, and they're really helping him learn about. Jimmy didn't grow up racing. Jimmy grew up playing hockey, and so Jimmy's now learning about racing and uh, definitely getting his feet wet. And he's traveling a little bit, and he's having to run his own race team, and so that's been really good experience for him. And Jimmy's been running really good. Hopefully, Jimmy can have another great weekend this weekend. He runs over some kart club over near Springfield, Illinois, and then he races at Rock Island next weekend on the streets of Rock Island. So yeah, and then other than that, I don't. I mean, there's always racing. Kyle Larson was going for his 7th sprint car win in a row tonight. He's been on a tear, so we'll don't know how that's going yet, but that's kind of the world of racing in a, at least as I know it, in a small little package.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kyle Larson, I think this is 7 consecutive wins so
7
far.
consecutive, yeah. Well,
So,
he's going for 7.
going for 7, that's right.
Yep. So uh,
And
he's
we talk about Larson a little bit in the Geoff Dodge interview. So,
yeah. Larson's been unbelievable, man. He's
yeah.
as bad as he was earlier in the year, man. He is flipped a switch.
It seems like he either like is just on absolute beast mode or he just isn't a factor at all. Seems like there's really
Yeah,
not a whole
he's
lot in
definitely
between.
not a guy that's going to run like 3rd, 4th.
Yeah.
He's either going to dominate. He may run 3rd, 4th every once in a while, but usually those off nights he's going to run 12th, 14th. It don't happen very often, but that's kind of how it seems to work for him.
Yep.
Um, but no, he's had an unbelievable last couple of months, right in the heart of the money part of the season too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, couple shout outs to some of our partners or whatever you want to call them. First off, Fast Times Indoor Karting. Um, they've been great with us the past year or two. It may have been almost 2 years now. Man, time just flies.
yeah,
But been doing that a while. And Patrick Patton with Racer Collect. If you're looking for any racing memorabilia, check out racercollect.com. And people see you on the screen, Sky. You're very comfortable now.
yeah. Oh, I am.
Yeah, you're
I
very
am
comfortable, and
very
that's
comfortable.
thanks to the good folks, the good guys. So it's going to be getting cold. here very soon, and you will be covered.
Yep, absolutely. And if anybody needs to have any inspections done or anything before the winter comes, call them up. They're easy to find. Just Google them. Good Guys Heating and Air, and they'll come out and help you.
And then if you have any sewer line problems, you can call Geoff Dodge.
Yeah, there you go. Man, we're starting to get it all taken care of.
Yep.
We need a roofing guy, and we need a
Well,
internal
you had a
plumbing guy.
roofing guy on your roof.
No, I've got a roofing guy, but we don't have an official roofing guy. And then we need a in the like a internal plumber.
You have a pest control guy.
I do have a pest control guy. Yeah, yeah. So we got that handled. Uh, Knock on wood, no more groundhogs in my attic. That's again a different story for a different time.
We even know a real life jaguar.
Yeah, he was stalking you up at on the Monon.
Yeah, I was walking on the Monon with my girlfriend. I had her dog leash in my hand. I was walking the dog, and all of a sudden, someone just comes up behind me and like almost like acts like they're going to tackle me. And like right when that happened, I just knew like who it was, and it was Mr. Jagger Jones.
Yep.
Scared me, scared my girlfriend. Like he said, he thought she was going to start swinging on him. And he's lucky the dog didn't, he didn't
What's
know about the dog.
What's
Dog
funny
can't
is
happen.
he doesn't look very strong. That dude's pretty thick, man.
Yeah.
He he'll hit you pretty hard if you ain't careful.
You're lucky he didn't get pepper sprayed by, one of the other people walking on.
That's true too.
Oh man. But yeah, well, anyway, I hope everyone has a great week, and
Yep.
hope everyone enjoys the interview, and hopefully we'll do more of these sooner.
Yep. Yep. No, I'm looking forward to it. Everybody take care.
Our guest today is a Wing 410 sprint car driver, having raced with the World of Outlaws, High Limit Series, and Indiana Maverick Sprint Car Series. He also raced Indy Lights. We're joined by Geoff Dodge. Jeff, I know I've told you for a while we needed to have you on the show, and we finally had you on. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for bearing with us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Definitely have watched a few of your other guests, namely the Jimmy Kite episode. And
Jimothy.
sorry, my wife left her phone in here and it's going don't do with it. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So talk a little bit. I mean, I know a little bit about your history, like as far as your dad having raced a Pikes Peak, but just talk a little bit about like how old were you when you, I guess, were first around racing, and when did you realize like this is what I want to do?
So that's I don't really remember a time that I wasn't around it. My dad started racing, like you said, up on Pikes Peak, and he did some sprint car racing too since before I was born. Um, Interestingly, my mom really doesn't care for racing any, and I'm kind of old, so back in those days, like kids weren't really allowed to come to the pits or anything. Since my mom didn't like racing, that meant that I didn't really get to go. So a lot of my memories of being a kid, aside from Pikes Peak, because I got to go on Pikes Peak, but like when my dad would go sprint car racing or something, was him leaving to go race and then kind of being upset I didn't get to go, and then waiting to hear how things went on Sunday morning, and occasionally getting to tag along whenever he was going. He never After I was born, he never had his own cars, so he always drove for other people, and so always loved as a kid getting to go, and whether it was the Pikes Peak cars or the sprint car, and kind of get to hang out in the garage, and usually it was like, hey, can I sit in it? Can I sit in it? Can I sit in it? So ever since I was a kid, like racing's always kind of been a thing I wanted to do. But 1988 Indy 500 was the day that I really decided I wanted to be a race car driver. And Rick Mears won Indy that year, and they had the all Penske front row and the Aero wheels and Pennzoil yellow. it was just everything about that deal was cool. And then the way Rick won the race and kind of losing ground early and making some calls through pit stops and whatnot to kind of get his car good and get back in contention. I just remember being like, wow, that is the coolest thing ever. And like, I want to be Rick Mears. So that was kind of the moment that I guess I'd have been 4 or 5. But I do still remember the 88 500. And then later that summer, I got to go watch my dad race sprint cars against the Outlaws at Colorado National Speedway back when it was dirt. And that was a pretty, I guess, life-changing moment. Watching Steve Kinzer and Wolfgang and Sammy and Brad Doty was actually still racing. He hadn't gotten hurt yet. And that
All
was
in their
kind
prime. Every one of them
yeah,
is still in their prime.
all in their prime, and that was kind of equally as awe-inspiring, I guess, for a 4 or 5-year-old kid. And it was like, well, I want to be Rick Mears, but I also kind of want to be a sprint car racer too. I remember I wasn't really a Steve Kinzer fan when I was little because he won all the time. I was kind of more of a Sammy Swindell fan, and the black TMC won, and so that was kind of the moment that I guess I made up my mind. The only other thing I really had any interest in doing besides driving race cars was I was into construction equipment. My mom, poor mom, had to drag me around to job sites, and I was pretty good at hustling people to let me ride on a piece of equipment too. So, so that was kind of what I wanted to be. It was either be a race car driver or a backhoe operator. And my mom was like, "Yeah, those are both terrible choices." But I guess here 35 years later, that's pretty much all I've done is drive race cars or now run equipment.
That going back to when you were a kid, I remember when I was a kid. I mean, I'm kind of the same way as you. I always say I've been in auto racing since I was 4 to 6 weeks old. I went to my very first race at Granite City when I was like 4 to 6 weeks old, and but I remember like I learned how to count through auto racing. I learned how to read because I'd read back then. Sprint car pictorial was a big thing when you were a kid. It'd been Speed Sport and Open Wheel uh,
Yep.
would have been the things, and I think auto racing kids always grow up in this kind of weird world that um, we become so enamored with it that we have to learn how to do all these things so we can, especially then, so we can keep up with it and we can find out all about it. And it's just funny.
100%.
Yeah, it's just funny. I mean, I remember, and of course, it sounds archaic now, but like Speed Sport would come, man, you would go through it. I'd go through the fine tooth comb and I'd see who ran where all over the country and all that. And when I hear stories like that, it always reminds me of that.
Yep. When I was a kid, it was definitely open wheel and speed sport. Um, the other one that I kind of used to get in trouble for is my dad. My dad was a big Indy 500 and Formula One guy too when he was younger, and so he had a magazine called Grand Prix, and he had like kind of a whole set. And I think it quit happening, but it was kind of a cool magazine. So I used to go down in the basement and get in trouble for digging into that from like the early '80s. And
I
remember
don't
kind
remember
of
that one.
being
Yeah.
into Formula One a little bit because of that. But you say like I didn't get to go to the races a lot, so that was how I got to kind of see it and experience it. And then Pikes Peak was unique because I'd get to go there. It used to be back when it was I guess you'd say more of a race. I'd kind of almost call it more of an exhibition now, but back when it was a race, like you used to go up in the morning and you'd have to get up there and get up at like 4 in the morning to go practice and ride up. And I used to love before the race, my dad would go up in a street car and drive the road in the morning
Mhm.
because, like, it changes over the winter. And so he'd kind of go refamiliarize himself with it. I'd get to go ride with him in the morning before work. We'd go up and drive the road a couple times. And I'll never forget. There's a hairpin, last hairpin before the finish line. I think it's called Olympic, and it's the biggest sheer fall on the mountain. And so we're driving up one morning, and my dad's like, "Yeah, so this is the biggest drop off on the mountain." He's like, "You want to go look?" And it was like, "Yeah, let's go look." And it's like, "Come on, Dad." And he's like, "No, I'm not going." I was like, "Why not? Don't you want to see over it?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "I've never looked over that edge because if you do, you'll never go into that corner as hard again." Um,
Okay.
and so like stuff like that was pretty cool as a kid getting to kind of be a part of.
It's funny. Unfortunately, obviously he just passed, but I was very fortunate to over the years become very acquainted with the Jones family and Parnelli and uh, Parnelli used to talk. He talked to we talked to quite a bit about his days around Pikes Peak, and I guess there was this joke, and I'm sure this story's been told many times, but there was this one corner that looks like it's a real sharp drop off, but actually it has a real gradual to another landing type thing. And like they would just pull jokes on each other like they were like the newbie they were taking up. They would cover the driver's eyes and the driver would act like he didn't know where he was going and he'd drive off the edge. Did you ever I don't know what corner that is or I don't
I
know,
never
you
I
know,
never knew that one. I could
yeah, he
imagine
talks about that.
maybe it'd be like coming into the ski area or something. There was like kind of a parking lot down there, and it looked like you'd
That
drive
may have
off
been
the
it.
edge and end up in a parking lot. There's another one up top where there's kind of where the pit area for the top section practice is that you kind of come around that corner and there's a little road you drop down off of, but I could see that being a spot that you might not if you didn't know, you might not realize that it wasn't a pretty big drop over there. But yeah, Pikes Peak was cool as a kid. It was a little wild because, like, before I was born, my dad beat Bobby Unser's record up there in
Oh
'79,
wow.
and that's kind of what got his career going. And for whatever reason, my dad and Bobby didn't really see eye to eye on a lot of things. Um,
Mhm.
Well,
but
to be fair, I'm not sure your dad was the only guy. That
well, but to be fair to Bobby, like he was always super super nice to
Yep,
me, and I think that used to chap my dad's ass even more.
right. Oh, he's a
um,
great guy, but, like, he'd love to be kind of the rough side of the file, you know what I'm
well,
saying?
and he was very opinionated.
Mhm.
Um, he was going to tell you kind of how he saw it,
Yep. That's
um,
exactly right.
and so maybe if you didn't like what he had to say, but in a lot of ways he'd been down those roads and probably knew, even if you didn't like what he had to say, like there was an element of truth in it. But
Sure.
that was always, you mentioned the Joneses, Bobby and the Unsers, they were all up there. Um, there was a lot of good race car drivers that ran up there over the
Oh, yeah.
years. So you kind of see that or around that. Obviously, there's the Indy connection with a whole lot of them, and so that I think combined with the fact that my dad, was always really into the 500, probably is kind of what set the stage. And then um, I didn't get to race for a long time because he wasn't really quick to want to say, "Hey, let's support this racing thing." So what ended up happening is was like, "Dad, can we get a go kart?" Like, "Yeah, why don't we try baseball?" No, baseball's not your thing. Dad, can we get a go kart? It's like, yeah, well, here's a pair of skis, and it's like, yeah, I really like skiing, but ski racing didn't work out. They closed the ski area in Colorado Springs kind of about the time I was ready to start chasing gates. And my dad was a good ski racer. He had skied for the U.S. ski team and went to the first ever World Speed Trials. And that's kind of when he fell in love with Formula One, was when he was traveling doing that. So skiing didn't happen. And I liked playing some other sports, but it was always wanted to race. So finally, I think in the way only a dad can, he's like, well, yeah, you can go-kart racing as soon as you can get yourself a go-kart, pay for it. So at 14, I found out that Taco Bell would hire me. And so I showed up at home with a Taco Bell uniform, and dad kind of looks at me like, what in the world are you doing? Like, you're lazy as the day is long, and you're telling me you got a job? And I was like, yeah, well, I talked to Grandpa, and Grandpa said if I get a go-kart, he'll take me racing. And he's like, he did he? But that's how it started. I went to work at Taco Bell and was making tacos and burritos,
Nice.
and eventually got a cart. And dad kind of agreed that he would pay for half and I would pay for half. And so whatever I put in the racing account, he'd match. And we did the first, well, I don't know, probably year and a half that way. And then obviously he got a lot more supportive, and we got kind of serious about karting at least as much as we could, and did the karting thing. And then kind of we were road racing, and we were doing the shifter kart thing and chasing the SCUSA Pro Moto Tour, which was kind of the national traveling tour.
Sure.
And it was a cool time to be in karting in the States because karting's usually very fragmented here. But at that point in time, like the SCUSA Pro Moto Tour was kind of the national tour. And man, the people that I grew up racing with doing that, so many of us went on to something else beyond karts. You know, Scott Speed was winning everything, and Allmendinger was there, and Bo Gidley was still coming and running, and Michael McDowell was there. Just a ton of guys that ended up racing something beyond karts, because it was kind of the only undisputed national deal. And then right about the time we got out of karting, things kind of started to get more fragmented again. So it was a neat time to be in karting, and it was always kind of interesting to see who you'd bump into down the road that you'd race karts with. And so then after karting, it was like, I think we're done, because we can't really take the next step to be more competitive at the national karting scene, because we kind of already, the year we did it, we kind of spent probably more money than we really should have. And so we were trying to figure out what was next. And my dad was racing sprint cars, and I thought, well, maybe here's a place that if I could find a way to get my foot in the door, that you could still find somebody that wants you to drive their race car. And that's kind of what we needed. So we got a mini sprint and did a year of that, because my dad was like, yeah, you don't need to go straight from go-karts to a sprint car. And then there was a guy from Denver, Harry Conklin,
Sure.
owned kind of the best race cars around the Denver area.
Yep.
And so my dad crashed a sprint car down in New Mexico one night. They needed a top wing, and Conklin's guys had one. And so they sent me up to go pick the wing up. And of course, I show up at the guy's shop who takes care of the cars, and kind of looking around like, dang, man, they got sprint cars and midgets and all kinds of good stuff here. And basically, once I knew where it was at, they couldn't keep me out of there. And started going to the midget races, helping them on the midgets. And when they'd run the sprint cars, which they didn't run the sprint cars a whole lot, it was kind of more midget focused.
Sure. Yeah.
But got to be good friends with a guy named Mark Mateka, who took care of those cars. And Mark was really good to me. And so at the end of my year of mini sprint race, and I had probably asked Mark about 6,000 times, like, hey, you know, like one of the guys they had driving midgets, Kenny Lewis,
Yep.
he didn't really like driving the sprint car for whatever reason. He's a dang good racer when he was head in the game, but he just had it in his head that he wasn't a sprint car racer. So it was always like, well, Kenny doesn't even like running the sprint car. Like, can I run the sprint car? And Mark's kind of like, look, man, no disrespect, and like, you've been running good in the mini sprint, but like, we probably get eight calls a week from guys that have won races wanting to get in those cars. And like, it's just not, I I can't just throw anybody in the thing. So you need to figure out how to get in a sprint car. And at the end of the year, he said, "Hey, I found a guy to buy your mini sprint if you want to go sprint car racing." He said, "Yeah, okay. Well, that solves getting rid of the mini sprint, but that doesn't necessarily solve having a sprint car." And he said, "Well," said, "I'll tell you what, sell the mini sprint, bring us the money, and we got an old sprint car that we've kind of got half pulled together, and we'll send you home with it, see how it goes." And so that's how we got started sprint car racing, and did that as a family operation for a couple years. And blew a motor up, and as things go, like, you blow up and you're pretty sure you're done again.
Yeah.
And we were parked next to a guy that owned cars out in Nebraska, and he's like, "What are you doing next week?" It's like, "Well, man, we're going home." It's like, "Well, yeah, I know you're going home tonight, but like, you got something for next week?" And it's like, "No." He's like, "Well, I got an engine." It's like, "Well, Larry, I can't afford to fix the one that's mine. Like, I don't want to borrow yours. What if it breaks?" And it's, "Well, I know you can't afford it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to borrow one." And so he loaned us an engine to finish the year. And then next year, he ended up hiring me to drive his car. And he took me to Knoxville, and we won the Rookie of the Year at the Nationals there. And that brought me to Indiana, basically, because they had the scholarship to do the Lights series, the Fast Track to Indy scholarship. So
You know,
that's kind of how I wound up.
it's funny you're talking about Harry Conklin and them. You know, people today, especially somebody 25 or younger, does not understand how tough that Colorado racing scene was for a very long time, especially midgets. And I mean, there were some great racers out of that area, between
Yep.
Strickland's and
Strickland's and Randy Roberts and
Randy Roberts. I mean, just everybody Conklin had in the cars, and there's tons more that I'm obviously forgetting about. It's kind of sad that we've lost some of those pockets of auto racing, but
and it's dead there. It is
yeah,
completely dead. So like when I was growing up and Colorado National Speedway was dirt, they had a pretty strong contingent of sprint car guys. And a lot of them were the same guys that were RMMRA guys. Because there were quite a few of them that would run both, like Randy and Harry had, both cars. And then when Colorado National went away and they paved it, that kind of killed the sprint car group. It never quite fully recovered, but the midget deal kept going pretty strong. And they're still going, but it's not, like you said, it's not what it was.
no, it was like used to be when USAC would go out on the West Coast or toward the West Coast swing, and they go through. Well, it was more maybe when they went to Belleville, but they'd go through Colorado, and then it was very common that no USAC guy was winning the show there.
Yeah, I mean, the Mile High Midget Classic used to be kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
And then I remember a couple times they came down and ran the pavement at the little quarter mile north of Pueblo, like right before the Mile High Midget Classic, which was like right before Belleville, I think, if I
right.
remember right. But yeah, it's too bad that the racing scene is kind of completely died out there. But I guess for me it worked out because the ASCS
Right.
thing was kind of going strong when I was running sprint cars, and so we got to travel a little bit, race close to home a little bit, and then about the time it was kind of slowing down was when I started moving east, and then ended up out here. I mean, still nothing. I mean, you could talk probably central Pennsylvania for wing sprint car racing, obviously is kind of a mecca,
Yeah.
but um, the non-wing stuff here and just the proximity even for like a wing guy to the different places that are kind of hotbeds, northwestern Ohio, Knoxville, and you're just kind of central to all of it here in
Right.
Indianapolis. So it's there's no better place to be for a racer.
No, you're right. And you mentioned winning that Rookie of the Year in Knoxville, and I guess the real question is, though, what was it like running Knoxville? I mean, I mean, is it one of those deals? I imagine, I have to believe it's one of those deals that one of these days you're going to get back there to run it. You know.
So that is a point of frustration a little bit. My best
Sure.
nationals ever was my first one, and it was kind of crazy how it all happened. I guess we let Aaron edit out being too long, but I was driving for a guy named Larry Ham. He's the guy from Nebraska who hired me after he loaned us an engine the year before. And Larry, he's dead now, so I can tell the stories as they happened. Not feel like I need to church it up, but he was a little crazy. And by a little crazy, like probably had a mental illness that was unmedicated and could be the most charming,
So,
nicest guy in the world one day, and like absolutely the worst guy you've ever met 5 minutes later.
so he's
So
pretty much like every other racer I've ever met in my life.
no, I've met a lot of racers, and like he took the cake. So he had this deal. He had a lot of businesses, and some of them were decent. So like he owned a Dodge dealership in North Platte, Nebraska. He had the Coors distributorship for Western Nebraska.
Wow.
He had a little speed shop. He had a golf cart rental business. So like I end up out there living in his lake house, thinking I'm going to try to be a race car driver. And so he comes up with these crazy quests, and the Knoxville story starts on one of those. So he had a 2005 Dodge cabin chassis, and he wanted to put a beverage distributing box on the back of it for the Coors distributorship. And there's a company down in Independence, Kansas called Hackney, and they make those beverage boxes. So I had beat Larry up over and over and over because he had a 410 that I wanted to run the 410. I wanted to run the 410. So I somehow talked him into going to Houston's one Sunday night. And we went, and it was cool. I got to run my first 410 race. And while we were there, he got talking to Justin Henderson's dad. And Justin was driving for a couple different people, but at Knoxville, he was driving for Dan Oswalt in the D1 car. And Dan had an Eagle chassis roller that they wanted to sell. And so Larry talks to Rod and decides that he thinks he wants to buy this race car. And their shop was in Iola, Kansas, which is about 45 minutes north of Independence, Kansas. So the quest is here, drive this cabin chassis down to Iola, Kansas. Here's a check from the Coors distributorship. If the car looks good, write them a check, drive on down to Independence. You'll have to get a motel and stay the night because it'll take them a few hours in the morning to put this beverage box on, and then go ahead and drive back, pick the race car up, then go to Wichita, pick up some tires from Hoosier, and then drop some engine parts off in another town in Kansas, and then come home with this race car and put it together. You should be home like tomorrow night. So I pack an overnight bag in my backpack and jump in this cabin chassis and hit the road. And like Larry couldn't be bothered with things like license plates or registrations or insurance. It was just like ready to go. You know, you got a tie strap around the fuel cap on the chassis. So every time you stop for fuel, you got to untie strap this thing and hold it up with the fuel dispenser and put fuel in the truck, and then put the cap on and strap it back to the chassis. So anyway, I beat my way down I-80 and drop south at York and go into Kansas and roll into Dan Oswalt's shop, like kind of late in the evening, the night that I left. Pretty road weary, look at the car, shoot the bull with them for a little while. Car looks fine. Write the check. And he's like, hey, I got to run down to Independence in the morning. They're going to throw this beverage box on, and I'll be back to pick the car up probably tomorrow late afternoon. So I drive on down the next morning and get to Hackney, and the guy looks and he's like, it's a Dodge? And I'm like, yeah, it's a Dodge. He's like, I told that guy it wasn't going to fit a Dodge. He's like, we're going to have to fab up new mounts and this and that. He's like, oh, this is going to be a pain. And he's like, I hope you brought a bag because it'll probably take us 3 days. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, I'm thinking I'm going to be headed home this afternoon. So they're like, well, you might as well get a motel. And I'm like, well, can I get a ride to the motel? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a ride to the motel. So I sat in this motel, walked to a Walmart so I could get some more clothes and sat in this motel for a couple days while they get this beverage box on. Finally get it on, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go pick this race car up and get on the way home. And I'm driving back up to Independence, and I look down, and the oil pressure needle starts doing one of these and goes to 0. So I pull over on the side of the road, call him up, like, Larry, the oil pressure just went to 0. And he's like, well, I'll call the guys at the Dodge dealership. So I call them up. I'm like, we've had some problems with those sender units. Like, it's probably got oil pressure. Like, fire it up. If it starts making bad noises, I guess it works. And if not, it's probably a sender. So we get the thing, fire it up. It's all good. And then comes the issue of, like, how are you going to load a sprint car in a beer truck? So,
But that initially was my first concern of this whole trip.
so we stripped the car down. And by the time we've dealt with the oil pressure and we've torn this car down, like, it's getting to be night again. So it's like, all right, well, what are we going to do? So we've got all the side beverage boxes, like tail tank in one, rear end in another one, front end in another one. So we've got it all packed up except for the frame. And we ended up running over to a guy's shop kind of down the way who had a forklift, and we laid the frame on the roof sideways. And it was like 13, 5.5 to the top of the front torsion tube. So I was like, all right, we should fit under most bridges. We're all good. And so we strap it down, and I take off and hit the road, stop in Wichita at Hoosier, and load the other side of the beer truck up with tires. And all that's left to do is drop this set of cylinder heads off with this little engine builder in Oberlin, Kansas. And I'm road weary. I'm tired. I've been on the road for like the better part of a week now. I thought I was going out overnight. I'm driving down this alley to this little engine shop. And I'm thinking, like, man, I am way too tired to be driving because I swear the phone poles are doing this. And I pull over at the engine shop and I look behind me, and I've got a whole crap load of like cable line and somebody's gutter and a whole bunch of stuff that I had snagged coming in the alley because it snagged it right around the torsion tube and
Right.
just ripped the crap out of everything. And so the guys at the engine shop, by now, people are coming out of their houses because I've like ripped the cable drops off a whole bunch of houses. And they pull a broom out, and they kind of pop the wire off the torsion tube. I threw them the cylinder heads, and they're like, you better go. So I hit the road again, and it's like, holy crap, can this get any better? I'm like 20 miles outside of North Platte, Nebraska. And I look behind me, and I got cherries, and they're pulling me over. And thank God I was close enough that the police officer knew the guy that I'd worked for, because he pulls me over and he's like, license, registration, proof of insurance. It's like, well, here's my license. I got no registration. I definitely got no proof of insurance. I work for Larry Hanneborg. And he's like, say no more. He runs my driver's license, goes back. He's like, tell your boss he's got a ticket coming in the mail, but just get out of here. So that was the end of that trip. Well, anyway, when I was down there picking the car up, I had kind of gotten to be friends with Justin Henderson's dad, and so he went to bat for me to Larry, the car owner, to bring me to Knoxville, and was like, "Hey, just bring him up here." So at the time, they had the 1,200-pound nationals, and so we went to Knoxville and ran the 1,200-pound nationals. So that was my second and third nights at a 410, and it went okay. We actually made the show, and then we went back for the nationals. So we ended up running the front row challenge and got crashed. So that would have been, I guess, fifth night, and then qualifying night at Knoxville was the sixth time I ran one. So I really didn't have any experience, to say the least, of 410 stuff. And so Knoxville was just kind of, he had a good engine because he had gotten a Mopar motor from Forbrook. He had beat up Kevin Miller long enough that Kevin Miller, I think, gave Forbrook a bunch of parts in exchange for selling Larry a motor. So Forbrook got parts and money. to sell one of his W5 headed cars before the W9s kind of came out, and that thing it ripped pretty good, and I was hanging on, but had a hard hitting motor, and that's kind of what got us to Knoxville.
So you get the scholarship for Indy Lights. Talk a little bit, and you told me this story a little bit, Jeff, but I think it's a great story about driving to Indianapolis and just the process of moving here and living and living in Indy for the first month or so.
Yeah, so I had come to Indianapolis once before for the PRI show. My parents didn't exactly know that I came to Indy for the PRI show. I was supposed to be at school, but drove out here. So I kind of knew what Indy was like, I guess, a little bit before I moved here. But when I moved here, I didn't know anybody. And a guy named Dave Reininger had bought a house, and a friend of mine, Linda Mansfield, got me hooked up with Dave. They agreed to let me rent a room. But the deal with my parents was simple. Like, if I was going to school, they would kind of help me race, and there were certain amount of, like, you could still be a kid and have some help from mom and dad, but like, because when I graduated high school, I just wanted to drop out of school and move to Indianapolis to be a race car driver, and they were like, yeah, well, you do that, you're on your own. So when I won that scholarship and it was time to drop out of school and go be a race car driver, it was like, well, you know the deal, like, you're going to be on your own. So I moved out here, and Brian Stewart was who I was going to drive for. Brian came into town, and we needed to run around and start rounding parts to put my car together up. And he drove the truck trailer down from Toronto. Was like, hey, I need you to drive around because I'm not driving the truck trailer around town to go find all these parts. And so we're driving around, and like every shop we stop at, I'm asking for a job because I need a job, right? I don't have very much money, and I'm about to run out. Like, I've got to pay rent, buy food, and all that stuff, and kind of be an adult. And so Brian starts kind of getting mad at me. Jeff, what are you doing, man? Like, everywhere we go, you're asking for a job. Like, you can't be asking for a job. And I'm like, Brian, I need a job. He's like, well, yeah, but you drive my race car. It's like, well, yeah, I drive your race car, but like, I'm not getting paid yet. So like, that's all fine and good, but I still got to survive from now till the first race at least. And he's like, well, can't you just call your parents? It's like, no, man, like, that's not the program we're on. Like, I'm on my own. And he's like, well, ugh. He's like, you can't have a job. He's like, you're supposed to be a race car driver. And I was like, okay. He's like, so here's the deal. He's like, I'm gonna give you, how much do you need to live? And I was like, I had kind of figured it up. It's like, man, I can survive on like $1,000 a month. And he's like, okay. He's like, here's $2,000, and I'll pay you $2,000 a month every month that you drive my race car, and then kind of work the winnings out after that. And he goes, and the only deal is you're supposed to be going out and having fun with the other $1,000 and being a race car driver, chasing girls or whatever. And so that was the deal. Was got $2,000 a month. I was a big time race car driver, at least in my mind.
So where were you chasing all these women at?
I mean,
How would Jimmy? Jimmy at
no,
Kelly's Pub.
honestly, so I met Jimmy the first time I ever came. Like I said, I came from the PRI show, and
Yeah. Oh,
my
okay.
parents didn't know I was here. So I was 19, and I was at school, and we had gone to a buddy of mine from Denver, Dave Newman. He actually works for Aaron Pierce now. But he and his dad, and he kind of went and helped her. I don't know exactly what the arrangement was, but they were working for Loyettes. I think it was Loyettes. And they were out doing turkey night. So me, Gary Taylor, Dave, we all loaded up in Dave's car and went to turkey night. And when we were at turkey night, a guy named Evan Avar was taking care of Bobby's stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
name that lives in infamy now.
Yes. Evan's got an interesting.
We were hanging out there, And Evan goes, well, hey, are you coming to PRI next week? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, if you want to be a race car driver, you better be at PRI. I was like, okay. So I'm laying in bed that week. My roommates at college are all drinking and partying. And it's like a Tuesday night or Wednesday night or something. And I'm laying in bed and they're up and making a bunch of noise. And all I can think about is what Evan said, which is like, if you want to be a race car driver, you better be at PRI. And I kind of ran some math. I was like, I think I got enough money for gas to get out there. And if I buy like some cereal and some 2 liters of soda or something, I could probably survive for food. I definitely don't have enough for a hotel, so I really don't know what I'm going to do. But I got up at like 4 in the morning and hit the road anyway. And Evan had given me his number. And so I think I was coming into St. Louis and realizing like, holy cow, like it's going to be cold. So sleeping in the car is maybe not a great idea. I'll call this Evan guy and see if he can let me stay at his place. So I call him up and he's like, oh, you're coming out? Good deal, good deal. He's like, well, we're going out tonight. He's like, you're 21, right? No, 19. He's like, well, you got a fake ID, right? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, well, here's the address and keys under the mat. And so he lived in a little apartment off of 56th Street. So I drive up, get there, think like, what in the world am I doing? And like the after story really kind of makes it like, what in the world were you doing? But sure enough, Key was there. And I let myself into his apartment. And it was like a 1-bedroom apartment with a couch in the living room. And I was pretty tired. So I put on some racing videos that were on his like TV stand and was watching USAC videos from the summer before and laying on this couch and just about to fall asleep. And I hear footsteps outside the door and door pops open and I look up and in walks Jimmy Kite. And I'm like, holy cow, you're Jimmy Kite. Because he had run his first IndyCar race at Pikes Peak in like, I think 97. And like, I was there because it was the first year Pikes Peak was open and Jimmy was kind of the talk of the town that weekend. So to me, he was like a bona fide IndyCar driver, kind of big deal. And I'm like, whoa, man, like, what are you doing here? He looks back at me, he's like, what are you doing here? And so we kind of start talking and all of his buddies are with him. And I'm on the couch and they're all on the floor. And the one guy who probably had a little bit more to drink than he should have kind of falls asleep and passes out. And that movie Jackass was going at the time. And so they had like the clippers, you know, the da da da. So their buddy, he passes out and they like shave a big old part of his hair off. And so then I'm wide awake, like, oh man, like I'm just the random 19-year-old kid on the couch, and these guys are coming in like that's what they do to their buddy. What are they going to do to me if I fall asleep? So it ended up being an all-nighter. That's when I met Jimmy, and we didn't really start hanging out again till after the whole Indy Lights deal was over, and kind of after he was done driving Indy cars too. So, like I saw him a few times, but we never really talked. And I'll be honest, I kind of just figured he either forgot or was too cool or whatever. But it was later that we kind of hooked up and laughed and remembered that first story and then kind of became one of my best friends. But yeah, so moving to Indy was an eye opener. It was definitely a little bit of culture shock because like you go from, you said, where do you chase the girls? Well, they kind of chase you if you're a young Indy Lights kid.
Do they? Do they actually?
I mean, back then they did.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was obviously I was sitting around, but what's so funny is like, and it's actually not so funny is, I think it was I believe it had already kind of changed by the time you come back here, or at least it had changed somewhat. But man, like some of those kids that come back here in the '90s, man, they would get into that party scene and just destroy their careers. I mean, it happened to several guys, and whether it's the drinking or sometimes they get into drugs or whatever, man. And it
I
was
think I was
bad.
lucky because I mean the party scene was definitely going. Um,
I'm telling you, it was there. I felt like it
I
was different. I
think
just
I think I was lucky because I almost feel like the sprint car crowd from a little bit earlier was probably a bit wilder, and like the IndyCar crowd, like we were all kind of wannabes in that scene, so like we might go down and hang out downtown with everybody, but like definitely wasn't the one ordering the bottle service.
right.
And so I don't know, like hindsight being 2020, I would love to have probably been more focused than I was, but it wasn't totally out of control.
Nah, there were. I knew some guys, especially in the '90s era, who just man, they got out of control. I mean, it ruined some of them. Like some guys had some real talent.
Yeah, I mean, Ricky Shelton comes to mind.
I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah,
Well, I mean, talented racer, and I think there's probably a little
it's
more
more
to
than
it.
him. There's more than him
Yeah,
too. I mean, there was other guys for sure.
but I think probably for him too, there's you talk about injuries and narcotic pain medicine.
Yeah,
See that a lot in like motocross or other sports where guys get hurt a lot. And I've been really lucky never to really, really get hurt
right,
in a race car. But but I think that sometimes you have other factors play into there too.
sure. Yeah, no, you're right.
But yeah, man, like it was definitely a different time.
Yeah, it is. It is a lot different than today. I will say that. I mean, I'm sure there's some guys who still do a little bit, but the entire scene for young people is completely different now too, though.
We like social media was just getting started.
Right.
So like, I didn't have Facebook, and like when I moved out here, made a MySpace page. That dates it, but it wasn't. I mean, I remember seeing the first smartphone in the garage area. What in the heck is in that guy's hand? It's huge, and it's like, oh man, it's Palm Trio. I got the internet, and you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool. So
It's
it's not like everybody was carrying a camera around with them all the time.
right.
And so I think, it wasn't very long after that whole evolution kind of took place. And so a lot of the dumb stuff that I guess we never really got into big trouble. Like most of it was just pretty much juvenile having a good time, and frankly, the most of it happened when Jimmy and I moved in together. That was when it really got entertaining. We basically relived our teenage years all over again. It was not a safe time to be driving down Georgetown Road at night because we might be waiting over behind one of the bridges with a three-man water balloon launcher. And like, I'll tell you, we had that thing zeroed in, man. So we were drilling cars there, water balloon launcher. Like, we had a thing that we used to do called the alien landing strip. And so you take a barrel of methanol, put it in the back of a pickup truck or a 1980 El Camino, and you take the vent plug out and let it drain out and drive down the road and light it on fire, and then you get like the cool low blue flames.
Right.
But one night I got wise and decided that like the low blue flames needed a little color, so we put some gasoline in with the methanol, and they were definitely colorful. They were also probably like 12 feet high, and Speedway PD showed up after that
I bet.
one. and we made a whole lap around the block that time. So there was quite a few. And then like I lived in Speedway with Jimmy at Dave's house. And so around 500 time, like our house was kind of the unofficial, night before the 500 parking slash base of operations. Like we built our garage out into a little bar, and cars got drug out into streets and just all kinds of stuff. Like I said, none of it was like real bad. But we got to know Jeremy from the Speedway Police Department pretty good, and he was a pretty good sport with us. We had a couple of mopeds that we used to like to race. We called it Scooter GP, but there was a road course in Mobile and Speedway, and we'd go race those Honda Elites at night. It's kind of a wonder nobody got killed, honestly.
That's funny. Yeah, it's you let a bunch of racers hang out with some idle time, you're going to get stuff like that.
Oh
It's just so hard to imagine Jimmy Kite like unleashed like that, because he just seems like the most innocent, nicest man you'll ever meet. I'm not saying he's not nice, but it seems like the most innocent, like someone who the stuff the Jimmy Kite you're explaining does not sound like the same Jimmy Kite to me.
Well, he's an instigator. The best though was one night we were down water ballooning cars, and we'd hit one, and then everybody'd be running, right? And like he's a bit older than us, so we're all sprinting back to the house. And Jimmy, he's short, so he couldn't go quite as quick, and he wasn't quite as good a cardio shape as some of the rest of us. So he's kind of lagging back, and he's running. And he tells the story where he goes, "It dawned on me, like, what in the world are you sprinting for? Like, I think he was 30, maybe 35 at the time, 34. He's like, why are you running? He's like, all you got to do if somebody comes around and it's like, what the heck's going on? He's like, I just got to look back and be like, man, somebody hit my car with a water balloon. Some kids, I'm looking for them.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun. That's a period of time. We had a group of us that we kind of called the Lost Boys, and my mom said Indianapolis was where little boys went to never grow up. So, like,
Well,
yeah,
it will keep you in a state of stunted growth. Like
yeah,
this, like if you really hang around it long enough, and if you really dedicate yourself to the life, it's just it's like this Peter Pan effect where you just nobody ever grows up.
well, I mean, I think racing's just one of those things that you fall in love with as a kid, and then you just, no matter how bad it breaks your heart and how frustrated you get, some of us, you still get that excitement that you had when you were a kid, and you just never really get over it. So you kind of do, in a way, stay a kid by going racing, because it's for everything that's changed about sprint car racing, midget racing, or whatever. Like, at its core, it's still the same thing that when I was 5 years old, going to watch the World of Outlaws at Colorado National Speedway, like, it's still kind of the same essence.
What I always tell people is, of course, I don't have kids, but non-kid division is going to be the hardest thing you ever do in your life, because your team has to be good, you have to be good, your equipment has to be good, and then you have to have a random, not always, but a lot of nights you just have to have that. Yeah, you literally have to have Lady Luck on your side, on top of everything else, and
Yeah.
uh, and it's so hard. I mean, the best who's ever done the sport. I mean, the like we were talking about one day, and I forget what the number was, but this was a long time ago. But like Bob East, one of the greatest to ever wrench on cars or anything like that, and he had like a 30% winning percentage, or some crazy low number. I mean, it may not have been 30%, it may have been a little higher, but I mean, it was just like it's sort of like baseball. I mean, you if you got 3 out of 10, you're a legend.
I mean, that's the truth of it. I think some of it is that you have however many cars show up to a race, and there's one winner, and everybody else came short. And
Yep.
so, I think that contributes to it. And if you come back into today, like the equipment is all good. I mean,
Yep.
there's not really anybody that doesn't have good equipment, and
There's no black magic anymore. There used to be guys who held the black magic, right? The guys that held the secrets. And although I would tell you that there's never really truly ever been a lot of secrets, but there were guys who were really great at what they did. Now everybody, like, you can buy everything to make you great. Like, I can go buy the exact same stuff that whatever team you want to mention has. Whereas before you
well, I
couldn't
mean,
always
that's
do that.
right, and that's where it's at. Like, we're a small team. We have one engine. It's a good one. Rick Long's Speedway motor, and
Best of the
thing
best.
rips.
Yeah.
And we're a small one engine team, and we've got Outlaw horsepower. Um, and the cars are all pretty much the same, but we've got good parts on it and everything else. And so for all intents and purposes, like we're not technically a one car team anymore because we have another one kind of going together, but we're a one car together, one engine, 1997 United Express Line trailer and a dually team.
Right.
But the one that we race on Saturday night or Friday night or whatever is Outlaw caliber equipment, so
once you roll the car on the
that's
track,
not,
once you roll the car on the track, you're equal with everybody. I mean, you
and
can't
so
you can't race the haulers, right? I mean, you can't race what's in the haulers, you can't race the haulers, but once you
yep,
roll on the track, your equipment's every bit as good
yep,
as anybody else's.
yep, and that goes through the entire pit area almost. Like everybody's
Yep.
got good stuff. The biggest difference now, I think, versus back in the day is like the quantity of equipment, but the quality is all pretty much the same. Because, like you said, you can go out and you can buy whatever the top teams have, and so I think on one hand, that does lead to a lot of parity, but on the other hand, the cool part is like the people make the difference, because
Yep.
you can't go out and buy Ricky Warner's experience. You can't go out and buy Kyle Larson's talent.
Right.
So, more than ever, when you see a guy, or I guess a girl potentially someday, but you see a person go out and win more than once in a while, like that's a real testament to the people that are part of that team, because that's what's making the difference. It's not the equipment, it's what they're doing with it.
It's funny you mentioned Kyle Larson, and I mean, Kyle Larson. One thing that is pretty amazing about what he does is like you said, he's doing it in an era of parody, which makes it even pretty even more impressive. Um, but the one good thing about having a Kyle Larson is a rising tide raises all boats, right? So everybody, you can only learn by competing against the best. You're only going to get better by competing against the best. So, um, you know, and today with video and all of that, you can really sit down and study a lot of what he does. And again, most of it is contained within his body, but you can really kind of see some of his process. And he does have a process. He does. I know he's way more cerebral than most people think he is. Like, a lot of people think he stabs and steers it, and that, I don't think that could be any farther from the truth. I think I think he's willing to lose a car. I mean, I think he's full commit all the time, but it's not stab and steer.
No, I mean, he's a gasser for sure. He's a gasser, he's aggressive. But I think some of what allows him to do that is how much he can process everything going on around him,
Yeah.
because it's not like he's driving through people every night. You
Oh,
know,
no, it's just
he's
the
good
opposite.
again.
He's missing stuff that other people get into.
Yeah, I mean, he's finding things in the racetrack that nobody else has found, and frankly, I mean, Paul Silva's really good, and he is a smart
Absolutely.
guy. But um, they haven't really been firing on all eight most of this year, and I don't know how much of it is that they kind of came on something with the race car, or if Kyle kind of just got in the right frame of mind again. But they're they were I mean, they were downright impressive at Peavey.
Yeah, I think the mechanical side always has to be strong. But when you do it as much as he does over and over and over again and all the different equipment he does it in, at some point, everybody just has to say, "Hey, man, this guy is the guy." I mean, I always tell a story, and I don't know if you can find it. He ran a race at Oski once. Remember when he used to run that Hoffman coilover car when nobody was running twisters anymore? He was winning races in Hoffman's car, and
Yeah, those were hard cars to drive at times.
and he wins a race. I think it's Oski, and at the end of the race, if I remember correctly, because I wasn't there, I saw it on video. He can't really stop because the car doesn't have brakes, so he has to weave it around. He kind of turns it around on the front straightaway, and also the left rear torsion bar at some point had the arm had come off the car too. And now did it do it rolling around into the after the checker? Maybe, I have no idea. But I mean, the guy is just phenomenal. I mean, just but he has this great ability, and you mentioned it earlier, where he can miss. Let's say he misses, right, and all of a sudden through that miss he finds something. It's like he understands how to listen to a race car. Like it's yeah, as you know, I mean, I race motocross for a little bit, but I've never raced race cars. That race car is always talking to you. It's always telling you something, whether you want to hear it or not. That's a different story. But I truly think that's where a lot of his brilliance lies. Is he'll say, "Man, car's not good here. Well, it feels good here," and then all of a sudden, and he also understands speed, right? He understands like some guys don't understand when they're fast. Like there's a lot of guys like they can't run by themselves on the track. They don't know when they're fast. And I think he figures out when he's fast. And then then he just realizes, okay, I'm fast here. I'm until that changes, I'm always fast here. I just now have to figure out how to maintain the rest of the racetrack. If I have the advantage here, I can't lose time here and give it back. And that's what I get from watching him is that type of mentality. Whereas a lot of guys will tell you, "Oh, the car just didn't feel right. It wasn't doing what I wanted to do." Well, yeah, I mean,
He's
it,
definitely good. He's definitely good at being able to say, okay, this is where my car has a
that's
weakness, but that means that maybe it's a strength over here. And
that's
I
right.
didn't get to see it a lot growing up, but they say that back in the day, Steve was a lot that way. That he would find something. His car wasn't good. He could find a way to find something else that worked based on what his car was, and then there was other nights
Yep.
where Steve would just get a look in his eye, and you knew that there was no way he was going to lose. Like I'd heard a story back in the day during the heat of the Steve and Sammy rivalry that I think Sammy junked him in the dash or something, and car was broken half, and they get it back to the pits, and it's kind of like we're done, and next thing you know, they got a couple of wreckers and they're pulling on it, and they get the frame pulled back to within half an inch or so of where it was supposed to be, and Carl slaps a piece of angle iron on there and welds it up, and yada yada yada. Or maybe it was a heat race, but anyway, he had to go out and they started the feature kind of back a ways. And the first lap, the car lays over and does a big old wheelie, and it's all janky and messed up. But that was a night that Steve was not going to be denied. And next thing you know, he's finding a line that works for it, and then he's kind of picking people off. And next thing you know, he drives to the front and wins the race. And the next morning at the motel, the frame's hanging out of the dumpster. And so, you know, like certain guys, and I certainly don't have that level of talent, but certain guys definitely do. I mean, Jesse Hockett kind of had a little bit of it, you know, where if you got him, if you got him mad, he was going to just find something a little deeper. And Kyle has that. I think Steve had it. And, you know,
I call some of those, I refer to some of those guys as magic men. Like they have magical moments, you know. They produce these memorable moments. Jeff Gordon was a guy like that.
Then you said Christopher Bell the other day as well.
Chris Bell at times, I've seen Chris Bell be one of the best race car drivers in the entire country. You know what I'm saying?
I remember the first time I ever saw Christopher race was down at the Short Track Nationals in Little Rock, and he was driving a heat, man. It was not a real good car. I think he ran third or fourth in the deal, and I was like, wow, this kid's the real deal.
Yeah, of course we don't get to see him race as much anymore, you know, in the open wheel world. You know, as long as he drives for Joe, that's just not going to happen. But when he does, man, he can be spectacular.
Yeah, for sure.
Clausen had that.
Yeah.
Rico has that somewhat. It's. I mean, but you name them. The reason why you can name them is because there's not many of them, right? I mean, you know, you mentioned Steve, Sammy, Wolfgang. All of them kind of had that, but it's it's rare. It's a step above, right? That's what everybody's striving for. But like I said, it's a nice thing to be able to compete against that because no matter what, it makes your game better. I mean,
at the end of the day, I mean, that's what we're out trying to do. Right. You know, I feel like in a sprint car, the way things went in my career, I've never really got to race a lot.
Are you doing 30, 40 races this year? What's your slate look like this year?
I think Peavey was 7 and 8.
Okay. I didn't know with all the wing racing now in Indiana and all that.
I mean, we'll hope to run like 14 or 15 this year.
Okay.
But that's kind of what we can do with one engine, you know? So
no, that's a great point. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And it takes so long to get stuff freshened up anymore that, like, if you don't have more than one engine, you're kind of limited to running like one cycle on the engine. That's about it.
Well, and Rick's going to do it right too. Rick ain't going to send back anything that's going to break and make his name look bad, which is what I respect about him, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of why we chose to bring our business there was because it was like, hey, there's only so many top flight engine builders in the country that you really would want to have building your stuff. And, you know, Rick has got his program and his package. And if that's not what you want or not what you can afford, then he's probably not a good guy to do your engines. He's not gonna take any shortcuts. So, like, it's been frustrating because we've had a car going now since 2021, I think, is the first year I put a car back together. And we've just been kind of stuck in this perpetual phase of like, trying to prove that we're investable to people that can give us the resources we need to race more. So basically, our program is all about promoting the skilled trades as a career option because, I was told growing up that being an equipment operator wasn't a good choice. And now that I own a small excavating company, one of the biggest challenges we have is finding people that want to do what we do and provide
Right.
a necessary service for our community. I mean, we put the water in, we put the sewer or septic in. I mean, these are things that support first world living that we take for granted. And like, we don't have enough people. Like, I can find work and I can get equipment. Both of those things aren't a problem, but finding people is the hard part. And so, in kind of going racing again and trying to figure out how we were going to potentially entice some partners to join us in the racing effort, it was like, what can we do with this to benefit other people and benefit our communities and stuff? And so I was like, well, wait a minute, like, I'm in a career that I get to use my hands, I get to build, I get to create, I get to basically play in a sandbox and get paid for it. And that's how I'm able to have a race car, which has always been the dream. So like, going to middle schools and telling that story to kids before they come into high school, because there's some opportunities in high school to explore the trades, so we kind of have 5 career paths that we sort of champion: heavy equipment operators, automotive and diesel techs, welding and fabrication, precision and CNC machining, and CDL drivers, because those are kind of all the things that are relevant to like both our industry and construction, as well as the motorsports industry. And sharing the story of, I don't care what your dream is. Maybe you want to have the coolest boat at the lake, or a single income household, or horse property, or you insert whatever it is that you want to do in life besides work here. And like, our industry is a place that you can make those things happen. And so, that's kind of what we're doing with the race car. And so we've been in this phase of trying to go good enough to prove to corporate America that, hey, we're a legitimate operation, and like, if you invest with us, that A, we can help promote the trades, but B, we're not going to make you look bad at the races.
So let me ask you this, man. And I don't mean to stop you, but it's on top of my mind. So have you ever reached out to like Mike Rowe from like Dirty Jobs? And
Interestingly, we haven't connected with Mike Rowe directly. However, the nonprofit that he sits on the board of is one of our partners, Skills USA. They sanction competition for high school students that are in trade programs. They're in all 50 states. And so when I kind of got started on this whole trade promotion deal, it was like, man, there's got to be a nonprofit working on this. So looked up, found Skills USA, called their national office. They got us hooked up with the lady here who runs the state of Indiana. And my first question was like, I see you guys have heavy equipment operators. Like, how do we get involved? And like, how do I try to hire some of these kids? She's like, well, we don't actually have a heavy equipment competition in Indiana. It's like, okay, well, we need one. I was like, oh, I'll do that. So another one of our partners is a construction YouTuber called Dirt Perfect. He's got about 250,000 followers, and I think he is the second largest excavating content creator by engagement on the internet. Basically, he's from Southern Indiana and he happens to be a race fan and has become a good friend. But so between him, myself, and Diamond Equipment, which is a Case and Hyundai dealership with operations in headquarters in Evansville. They've got branch in Terre Haute, Mount Vernon, Illinois, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee. So basically, they provide some equipment and some personnel. I write the test and kind of come up with the exercises, and we all kind of bounce it off of each other and come up with it. And then at the state fairgrounds, we basically put on a heavy equipment competition for kids
Oh,
that
nice.
are in a trade program. We've got a YouTube channel called Ground to Glory. If you look us up, there's an episode on there with Dirt Perfect and I kind of showing what we did at this year's. And so that's been one avenue that we've been working and trying to help it grow. And it's been cool because the first year we did it, we went from not having a competition to having a competition. And like there were 4 kids from one school the first year, and it was kind of like, oh man, well, that's a bummer. But then you go, but that's why we got to be doing this. And then this year was our second year, and we had like 11 kids from 3 trade schools. And so I'm sure part of the reason we had 3 trade schools bring kids this year was because last year they saw what we were doing with one. And we qualified a kid for their national competition this year. And myself and Diamond and Dirt Perfect sponsored his travel because the kid that won the first year was awesome. And his parents said it wasn't worth his time to go compete at the nationals. And I kind of thought, well, regardless of what the parents think of this as a career choice, maybe if it's not going to cost them anything, they would support sending their kid. So this year we did send our kid from Indiana down to Georgia, Atlanta for nationals, and we went down there and checked that out, and that was incredible. And there
That's
are some
awesome, man.
really talented kids across all the career paths, but especially the heavy equipment path down there. But yeah, so we're actively working on, and we have some things in the works that I hope will bear fruit here soon. But we're really trying hard to. I think we're getting to the point where we're showing that we're not going to embarrass you at the racetrack, and we're showing that we are making a difference as far as promoting the trades. And now we just need some more resources so we can take it further and wider and do more of it. And I think sprint car racing is a good spot for a company to invest in, because we are a skilled culture.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of trade people that participate or are race fans of what we do. And so if a company spends some money with our program, we're going to give them a good return on the marketing side of things. And then you mentioned like a rising tide raises all ships. That's kind of what we're trying to do for our industry, which is let's go away from the racetrack and see if we can inspire some kids with my story of basically from the end of my quote unquote professional attempt at racing to going racing again at a professional level, but with my own program, and how that happened in a 6-year period because of the opportunity I found in construction. That, while they're going into high school, maybe they want to explore those trades and come compete at our Skills USA competition and take that chance in high school, whether they end up going into the trades or not. There's no better time to do it than when you gain some employable skills for free.
What would be really interesting, I think, because I'm just assuming here that a lot of the kids come out of the rural areas. And that's of course a lot of the farming culture and that sort of thing where the kids are around heavy machinery. What would be really interesting is if you could really connect with some groups to try to work with some of these kids in the inner cities that have good grades, good students, but maybe not necessarily wanting to go to college type kids. Because there's this one kid I talk to every once in a while, I see every once in a while, and he's learning to become, a welder. He's like 19, 20, so he's going to school to be a welder now. And he told me one time, he goes, "Man, I didn't even know that was available to someone like me." He goes, "I didn't think those kinds of jobs didn't even know how I could ever got into it. And then he found a program, yada yada yada. But
Yeah,
you
so
know, I mean, that could be
that
an avenue too. So
we're actually working with the Department of Workforce Development.
nice.
That's one of the biggest thing overall is we need to get in the middle schools, man, because
Yep.
they're forcing kids to make some career path choices by like their freshman year of high school now. And there's actually some grounds to where I'm going to use heavy equipment operator as an example because there's probably fewer of those programs than anything.
Right.
So if you have a kid that goes to say Ben Davis High School and they want to be an equipment operator, and you even have Area 31 right there on campus, and they say, well, hey, I want to be an equipment operator, and they're like, well, we don't offer a program for that. Area 31 doesn't offer a program for that. The school is supposed to pay for up to a 1-year program to send you off campus to a trade school that does offer that program. And I don't think that the guidance counselors are really advertising that because that comes out of the school budget. And I think it's a lot easier to hand a kid a college application and a student loan application because that doesn't
Right.
the school's budget. And so we need to get into the middle schools, show them what you can do in the trades, and then educate them on the things that they're going to have to ask for in order to take advantage of what's already there. And so that's what we're working with the Department of Workforce Development on, is getting into the middle schools, because it turns out you can't just call the middle school up and say, hey, yeah, so I've got this idea that I want to promote the trades. Can I come in and make a presentation to your students? They don't really let you do that. So, and interestingly, the Department of Workforce Development's like, we need more people that are going to spend time with middle school kids. We can find all sorts of companies that want to come and talk to 17, 18-year-old high school juniors and seniors because they're looking to try to hire them. But by then it's too late. Most of them have made their minds up and are doing
Right.
and we can't find very many people that want to come and spend time with a bunch of 7th, 8th graders that are getting ready to go to high school, because it's 4 years or so before there's an opportunity to make a hire. So that's like one of the things at Geoff Dodge Racing that we're going to put our hand up and say, look, we will build ourselves to go do that, to make that investment of time, knowing that we're not going to hire somebody out the back end of that. But if we don't go start making that investment in time now, 4 years down the road, we're not going to see any more kids in the trade program. So,
well, and that's a really interesting thing too. And I don't want to say dollar amounts because I don't want to give anybody false ideas because I don't know what they are and yada yada yada. But I think I just don't think I mean, so many kids just don't, and their parents don't know. Um, you can make the same living you could make, or maybe a better living than going to college, but coming out with all that debt, people never think about the debt part. They only think about the earning part. Well, if you can get the same, if you can get a little bit less money even without the debt, I mean, you have a total different life that they don't that we had this ridiculous saying in our country for a very long time: work smarter, not harder, learn the code, all that crap. And that does work for some people. But there's some people just want to get up, earn an honest day's pay, and go see their family at night. You know?
I'll tell you right now, if you got a CDL and you're not afraid to come to work, you make more than most bachelor college graduates
Sure.
tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
And you can get your CDL for free in high school. I've got a guy working for us that we're getting ready to go do his ELDT, entry level driver training, to get his CDL, and it's going to cost me $4,000. So why, as a high school kid, I mean, heck, even if you were planning on going to college and you were like, hey, I'm going to work and drive a tractor dump truck in the summertime and I'll make more money than I'll make when I get out of college to be a who knows what.
Yeah, we
But
just have this culture right now that says that all that stuff's not cool, when actually
Right.
the cool kids are the ones who do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
and I
saying?
think
I mean,
I think it's starting to change. I think
I
that
think so.
a lot of this generation of young people are starting to see kind of how crazy the whole student debt thing is, and like, there's a lot of competition for those entry level jobs. So you see a ton of people that have got a bunch of student debt and they get out of college and can't find a job doing whatever they thought they were going to do. And so they're working some, frankly, probably beneath the trades job, just trying to keep up with the
Yep.
debt. So, like, I think there is a positive change. It's going to take a while before we start to see, as communities, the benefit of those kids making different decisions. Um, but I think there is kind of some wind of change blowing, and so I think that's good. But man, like, I look at what I've been able to do, and I wish I had started much younger. Um, but at the same time, like, I don't think we're gonna go change the world, but if we could change a few kids' perception of what it is, because I'm a big proponent. My whole life, I've mostly just done what I want to do,
Right.
and maybe it hadn't gone the way that I wanted to do it, but like I've always been like kind of a heart on your sleeve, chase the things that you enjoy and chase them hard. And so I look at somebody, and I think part of our problem we have in the trades right now is we spent the last 30 years saying any kid that struggles in a traditional academic environment, let's send you to trade school. And if you do remotely decent in a traditional academic environment, you need to go to college, whether that's what your passion, whether you really want to or not.
Right.
Like, I went to school because that was what was expected of me. And I thought that I was going to go do what my dad does. And he's had a very successful career, does have a very successful career. He's a wealth manager for Royal Bank of Canada, does well for himself. And so I figured I was going to go into the family business. So I went to IUPUI for accounting and finance. And what I didn't know when I showed up at IUPUI was that I was going to like a brainwashing facility for young entrepreneurs, and came out the back end and was like, well, I can go home and go to work for my dad and make plenty of money, but there's no racing left in Colorado. Or I got to find a way to do it here. And I kind of did what I always do, which is like, what do I like to do?
Right.
And I knew that I didn't want to start a business in racing. So
No, I can tell you sure as hell don't want to do that.
I ended up going into construction, and it took a little while, but like 6 years is about as long as it takes somebody with my degree of motivation to go to school to get through college. And, I bought my own race car, and it was
Sure.
like, so I think that trying to find the seventh or eighth grade version of me, the kid that does well in school, maybe has parents that are kind of like, yeah, you need to go to college and you could go do what your dad does. That's looking at what their dad does, going, man, I really don't think I'll be happy doing that. The only reason I would go do that is for the money. And I just don't
Right.
think that's a way that you live your purpose in life.
Yeah.
Because I think we're kind of all made with interests and passions and a motivation to do the things that we're meant to do. And so encouraging people to follow that, and that there is a path to be successful regardless of what anybody's told you.
Well,
But this is
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. No, I agree. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. I was just gonna say, like, this is kind of backtracking a little bit, but you're just talking about like your dream to be a race car driver and to move to Indiana because that's where you needed to be. Obviously, a big part of Indiana is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Obviously, you didn't get to drive in the 500, but you did get to race at the Speedway. And I just wanted to ask kind of like what that experience was like for you.
Um, there are probably like 3 days in my life that I will never forget. And like you kind of remember vividly. One of those is the day that I got to race the Speedway. The other one was the day my daughter was born, and the other one was the day I got married. So like,
Wow.
those are kind of like if I was going to say what are the 3 best days of my life, those would be the 3 best days. And the Speedway was the first one to happen. It was surreal. I mean, every time I got to drive, so I got to run the Freedom 100, and then we got to test there for a day, and so that was the first time I got to drive the Speedway. It was at the Spring Indy Open test, and I remember driving off of pit lane, and it was oddly familiar because like you played Indy in video games. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with Indy 500, the simulation. Pyrrhus, kind of the first real attempt at making a computer simulation of racing. So I have no idea how many laps at the Speedway I cut on that as a kid at my dad's office with the keys on the DOS platform computer. And then like, you drive off a pit lane there and it's like the first half a lap, you don't even realize it's real. You feel like, man, am I watching an onboard camera? Because I've watched a million laps on an onboard camera here. Then you're like, oh no, it's very much real. Just getting to be there and getting to go around that place at speed in an open wheel car was a lifelong dream come true. I would have loved to have gotten to be sitting in a race car in my fire suit and helmet here in a muffled back home again in Indiana. And that didn't happen, but for where I came from, and it's almost like hard to even imagine how it could have happened. It's like I had no, it was a blessing beyond words because like there was really no way that I should have been there. And so, I'm really grateful for that. And then we had a pretty good day at the Speedway. It didn't start very good because we didn't get to qualify, so we had to start last. And back then, the Light Series had like 19 cars, I think, that we had for the Speedway, and like half the field wasn't one team.
That's a good point.
And the race went 40 laps green to checker. So, the idea that you can't have a developmental series run the Speedway and have a clean race, like we kind of dispelled that. And we set a race record for how many cars we passed. And I kind of felt like it was fun because I got to do it a little bit the short track way.
Yeah.
Kind of invented the outside pass going into turn 3 that got real common in years following. That Dallara car raced at Indy so well. I mean, you saw some of the finishes later on, like the one that they were 4 wide and stuff, and that car just raced awesome at the Speedway. But it was a neat day. Started off plugging the fence on lap 4, bent the car, made it faster, and we took off.
So when and no matter what happens in your life, I mean, again, non-kid, non-family division, I mean, that I don't care who you are, that's pretty special I mean, because it's something that's most likely, I mean, anything could change, but most likely it's going to be there. I know it'll be there long after I'm gone. And I suspect it'll be there after you're gone. And if people look hard enough, they can find your photos there, and they can find your name there, and you know, as weird as it all sounds, I mean, when at the end of the day, it's kind of, I don't know, we don't have those. Most humans don't have those opportunities to leave their mark somewhere, especially something that's so much bigger than them.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
that's pretty cool. And so do you have like most drivers who've been there, like you go under the tunnel on 16th Street and you first see the museum, and do you have the butterflies that people talk about?
Um, yeah. I mean, I had a unique way of getting there, go to work, because I did not go through the tunnel on 16th Street. I walked under gate 6 from my house.
Well, I mean more these days, you know.
Oh,
But no, no, you do get butterflies, goosebumps, or whatever every time you walk in the place. And I think over the years, like, you kind of went through a range of emotions. Like when I was younger and it was more recent, and some of the things that were promised that didn't happen as part of the program that I was part of, you had a little bit of bitterness or frustration because I had been told I was gonna do the entire light series in '07, and then have a one-off at the 500 in '08, and then I was on my own. And so I had '07 and the one-off at the 500 to try to figure out how to make my way after that, and we didn't even finish '06. So, like, for a little while, you kind of would go there and see what was going on and feel like a little bit bitter. Like, man, this was not how this story was supposed to go. But there are so many people that have,
oh,
you know,
absolutely.
similar stories about how their opportunity went. And then you get a little older and you kind of realize, like, wait a minute, Memorial Day 1988, I watched Rick Mears win the Indy 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and that's what made me want to be a race car driver. And um, Carb Day 2006, I got to race at that same racetrack, and the first guy to drive me around the place and tell me how to get around Indy was Rick Mears. um,
And you
so
could
you
ask
kind of
Rick any
start.
question. The greatest part about Rick Mears is you could ask him any question; he's going to answer you honestly.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know Rick, but everybody knows him will tell you the same thing. Like I mean, Rick is just Rick, and that's
Yep.
all he is, and he just loves that place, and he'll share his information with anybody.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was amazing to me in the Light Series. Like some of the kids from overseas that maybe didn't know who he was, and like he'd be talking, they'd like wander off and not be paying attention. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you're crazy. Like this
Right.
guy's one of the best ever here, and like he's gonna impart some knowledge that you can freely take, and it'll help you. And like
Right,
you guys don't know who he is, so you don't think he's worth listening to because you're kind of too stuck on yourself.
right,
And so Rick he was open to share. I mean, the way he told me how to do it was like at the end of a driver's meeting at the open test. They're like, "Hey, yeah, Rick's going to take out a minivan, and if you guys want to jump in and go for a ride and hear how to get around this place, like hop in with him." And like I'm there, and aside from when he shows you what happens if you have to pinch it coming off a one in the minivan, was pretty scary when that happened, but it was a pretty good pretty good indication of what you don't want to turn into soon.
right.
Because I don't know, I think it was a Dodge fan or something, but like it definitely went snap oversteer coming off of one.
I think it's cool that, I mean, your story really comes full circle in so many ways. Like, you're first off, you're living basically all your childhood dreams, right? And I mean, that's really I think what the American dream is all about. And I think when people think of your story, that's what they should think of, because that really is the American dream, right? And and even now, like, and I'll give you kind of opportunity to talk about this, but like your sprint car operation now, like your crew guys, like Charlie, for example, he was kind of pulled from a program similar to what kind of the skills trade program, right? Like, so everything has kind of come full circle in so many ways.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's our team is really pretty cool. So I guess probably need to give them credit where credit's due. So my crew chief is Nick Bussell. I raced. He was actually way better than I was in go-karts, but he was a product of the SCUSA program. Won a national championship there. Won a couple WK national championships. He's always been a big sprint car fan.
Is he related to Rick Bussell? You know,
No,
old sprint car racer? Okay.
no. He came up through Formula Renault into Indy
Okay.
Lights. And then after Indy Lights, he did some ASA stuff and built a dirt modified and ran a dirt modified. Um, but he's a veteran of the speedway too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And Charlie Dana, like his uncle was Paul Dana. Um, and so for obvious reasons, his dad doesn't spend a lot of time at the races nowadays. And Charlie has a passion for racing and wanted to get plugged in, and I'll give him credit. Like I called Area 31's automotive instructor. His name's Danny Camden, and said, "Hey, like I'm looking for a kid that might want to come racing for us with us in the summer, but would be willing to help us out because I need some more help and I don't really have money to pay somebody to go do this." And he said, "Yeah, I've got a kid." And so that was Charlie. And Charlie didn't have, honestly, he didn't think he had any interest in oval racing, and he certainly didn't have any interest in dirt oval racing. But it was like, here was an opportunity to get his hands on a race car, so he thought he'd take it, and we've converted him.
Hey, and I've told Aaron this before. Paul Dana, one of the nicest guys I ever met. I met him. He used to come in the shop a little bit. He would buy tear-offs because he was running Kenyan cars when he wasn't running IndyCar. And he'd go to Speedrome and some other places. One of the nicest guys I ever met. I was really sad when he passed.
Charlie, it was interesting because Charlie's asked a lot of questions about his uncle. Like, I didn't know Paul well. I'd met him a few times, and he was always a pretty nice guy. But I think now that I'm older and I have a little bit more clear picture of what actually happened or like what he managed to pull off, is like it is so hard
Yeah.
to find the support, whether it's from sponsors or whatever. I mean, anything short of just having family money, which Paul did not have. If you are immensely talented, it is hard to find people that want to back you to get in an Indy car. So, from the side of the business of racing, I think had Paul decided that he wanted to not be the guy sitting in the seat, you might actually talk about his team in the same realm as you would a Ganassi or a Penske, because he was that good at the business of racing.
Yeah.
Because without having the benefit of being a highly lauded, talented young guy, coming up through the Formula Car ranks, he was actually able to raise the money he needed at every step along the way to keep going. And so, was he the most talented driver in an Indy car? Absolutely not. Was he probably a little out over his skis? Yeah. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the business of racing, like he might have been an example of one of the best, because he was able to ultimately put the ethanol deal together. And I know that had a lot of fingers that went a lot of ways, and Paul was able to put it together and not get himself cut out of that deal and
Right.
in an Indy car. So, I think it's a shame that we
I
don't.
don't think that's ever happened, by the way. Nobody ever takes a sponsor to a team and then they lose it to the team. Do
No,
they?
never.
Do they? Does that happen? No way.
Just happened.
But I mean, I think you know that's the legacy I feel like Paul probably rightly
Yeah.
deserves. Someone who is phenomenal at the business of racing, and unfortunately, I don't know that that's the story that comes to mind But when you actually stop and think about it, like that's the only conclusion you can come to.
No, I think that is a great point. Yeah, he like I said, I didn't know him. He just come in the shop, but he was always such a nice dude. Um, and
But
just
it's been
just nice,
cool
man.
because like Charlie's gotten to come racing, and like he was a trade school student, so like I feel like there's a little bit of we're putting our hopes and dreams where our mouth is with that, and like he's coming around, and he's a very valued member of our team. Um, we've got a couple other people that I'm hoping will come around more often. Nick Correa, I think he had a sprint car, but he came to Peevely with us and kind of fit right in. So, I'm definitely fortunate to have, or even Aaron. We're trying to build this YouTube channel partly as a way that we can put content out there that kids can receive and hear our story. But I'm just really fortunate to have people like that at this point of where we're at, like ain't nobody getting paid.
Right,
I'm certainly not making money. Nick's not getting paid. Charlie's not getting paid. Aaron's not getting paid. Like we're all doing this because we believe in it and we love racing. And I'm just fortunate to have a group of people that are willing to give their time for that. So, big thanks to everybody, my wife for putting up with this craziness. Because it's she's put in a lot of help to try to help get us going, and like I think we're making progress, and my hope would be that we can kind of get over the hump of figuring out how to get a second engine and get to race a bit more, because I honestly think for what we have, um, we really didn't close the deal at Peely, but like I see the potential that we can run with anybody out there. It's not that far from running with anybody out there. We're not racing 80 times a year like they are. So,
right.
you give us 50 races together, and I think we can do pretty good.
That heat race, man, that heat race Friday at Pavley was just insane. Just so stacked, and do you think that was probably the most like stacked heat race you've ever been in? Has to be up there.
It, I don't know how it gets more stacked than that. I think
Yeah.
the best way you can figure that is when Charlie was going, "Oh man, there was like 300 feature wins in that heat race," and you're like, "Yeah, Charlie, you're pretty low actually,
Yeah,
because
really low.
one guy in that heat race has 315, and that's before we even talk about the other five hitters." So, um, but yeah, I mean, it's just that's just what you get in 410 wing sprint car racing nowadays.
Yep.
There's a lot of freaking good guys. Like I'm kind of casually looking here at the prelim feature for Knoxville on my phone, and you got Rico leading, Larson second, Macedo third, Tyler Courtney fourth, Baylog fifth, Pittman sixth, Bacon seventh, Sweet eighth. Zeb Wise having a good night, running ninth so far. Brian Brown in 10th. I mean, there's so many good guys and so much good equipment right now. And there's more money, I think, because of the streaming stuff and because of the fact that guys like Kyle Larson are making a priority of coming back and racing on the dirt. Like, I still think fondly of the late 80s, early 90s, because that's when I was a kid, and you kind of get tempted to be like, oh man, the good old days. Well, the good old days are now. Like, I don't think the
Yeah.
sport's ever as healthy as it is now. I mean, I don't know that the USAC scene is quite as strong as it used to
USAC
be.
scene's not. My personal opinion, the USAC scene's not. But I think wing sprint car racing
But I don't think wing
is.
sprint car racing's ever been better.
Yeah, I would say that wing sprint car racing's as good, if not better, than it's ever been. You you know, and I'm more of a USAC guy because that's what I grew up with. But I would tell you that I feel it's down a little bit right now. I mean that's no slight to anybody. Logan Seavey's absolutely putting on a show everywhere he goes, and that's because of his talent. Everybody forgets that Logan Seavey won a USAC championship years ago in the midgets before he had these heart issues and all that. So
Logan's definitely an extremely talented individual.
absolutely, yeah. He, if not for some, I don't know. I don't know Logan's personally. I don't know his story, but I would say that he was derailed probably by some health issues, or he would be possibly racing with Kyle on Sundays as well. So,
Yeah, well, like we all kind of have
yep.
our own story, and like I don't think it's bad that we have talented guys that stay in sprint cars. Just
No,
in case you guys were curious, if you wanted to know who won, the 57 just rolled into victory lane. So
no way,
No.
no way.
Shocker.
What?
Who's that?
Probably just had that. Probably had that used wing tree on it too that Paul Silva just pulled out of the trash.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that
he's,
article is fun.
he's
Well,
something else.
man, that guy, man, they are on a roll. If you're going to hit your stride, this is the right time of the year to do it.
Right time of the year to do it. It's definitely that. Man, that is wild.
Yep. What's the pay to win the Nationals this year?
Uh,
I know it's over $1 million total purse.
175 maybe, but I think it might be I think there's lap money for every
Yeah.
single lap that you lead, and so if you let off 50 laps, maybe it's like 2.25 or something.
Jesus Christ.
That's like what the Chili Bowl pays, right, Scott?
Yeah, well, right, except times 10 or more.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think wing sprint car racing's in the best place it's ever been.
Yeah.
The high limits and the outlaw deal. I think as long as there's 2 streaming services, there's room for both series.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that want to see one or the other fail, I'm like, I don't understand why. Like they're two different. They're the same type of racing, but they're kind of two different takes on it. And I think there's room for both of them. Like I said, as long as there's 2 streaming services that are back in each series, obviously Flow with high limits and Dirt Vision's owned by the World of Outlaws. And all that really means is there's even more races that pay a lot. And there's
Right.
even more opportunities for teams to step up and be full-time traveling professional sprint car teams. And it's going to make races like the Knoxville Nationals and the Kings Royal that much bigger, because that's going to be the moments where you get to see the whole sport come together in the same place. And so
I think the only thing I would say was disappointing from the outside looking in was they paid 21 grand plus lap money to win Oski the other night and only had 24 cars show up. I thought that was a little rough, but other than that, that's an anomaly these days and not
that is
not
tough.
the norm.
I think part of that too, though, is like engines are so tough right now. And so going into the Nationals and like Oski's not Peevely. It's
not.
as fast, if maybe not even a little faster than Knoxville. So rolling into the Nationals week and with the Cappy on Sunday and everything else, like I think there's probably an element of people just kind of saying, hey, like we just got done with the dress rehearsal for the Nationals, and let's focus on our qualifying night. I mean, when we ran Knoxville my rookie year, we went to Oski and got tore up, and it kind of made for a busy Tuesday trying to be ready on Wednesday. So I think my plan, if the next time we go back to Knoxville, would be race the Cappy on Sunday and spend a couple days just going through everything with a fine tooth comb and getting ready for your prelim night. I think one of coolest things of Knoxville that's changed is the way that they're doing the Friday night program. I mean, it kind of brings Friday night to where it has some meaning, and I think there's some intrigue of like, if you're one of those B main cars that's locked in to say 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, like, you're fast. Like, do you go ahead and withdraw and try to requalify and get yourself locked in the show? It kind of does a little bit of that whole bump day drama of, do you hold on what you got and hope it works out? Because I'll tell you what, man, like, I don't know. Knoxville Nationals B main is exactly the place that I want to have to run, because that's 22 laps, and it seems like by the end of it, there's always comers and goers. So
Right.
I think the Nationals format's right, and the race pays good, and it just seems like it's really got a lot of momentum right now as a sport, and I hope that they can keep it going, and I hope that we can kind of claw our way up to where we get to be a little bit more regular with kind of that top flight deal. But you talk about Indiana racing, the Maverick series is a pretty good deal right now for
Absolutely it is. Yeah, absolutely it is.
Yeah.
like I little disheartened at Bloomington a couple weeks ago. You go, holy cow, guys. If you're a local Indiana racer, you don't need a Rick Long Speedway to be competitive at a place like Bloomington or Putnamville. And we ran third at Bloomington and got $3,000. And then the next night we kind of didn't do so well and ran seventh and got $1,100. And like, I don't know what it pays to win Putnamville on a regular Saturday night now, but if you have a sprint car here in Indiana and you're crying that you don't get paid good enough, I have to kind of say you really just don't want to, because
yeah,
you're not showing up. You're not showing up for the opportunity to get paid better. So
right.
like,
Right. No, I understand what you're saying there, and I said that too. I said, they're paying money. I mean, so there's no excuses.
well, and I hope that like it has enough, because like right now it goes because Kevin Newton wants to have a place to run wing sprint cars in Indiana, and we're really lucky that there's a guy like that that wants to do that.
Sure.
But at a certain point, like, it's got to stand on its own 2 feet, because nobody's going to throw money at something like that forever.
No,
So
you're right.
my hope is that the local racers can get over the wing versus non-wing thing enough to support the series that's actually trying to give local racers a chance to race for as fair of money as you could ask for at places close to home. It's only 12 shows. Like, if you're a non-wing guy, you don't have to become a wing guy to go run the Maverick series. You just have to have a set of wings, come run 12 races, get to race 12 races where you get paid pretty much to run in the top 10, what you probably get paid to run in the top 2 at, the weekly non-wing stuff.
No, I absolutely agree.
But
I agree.
anyway, gents, I've got more septic system, and we've got a commercial job to do on Saturday night that is the type of job that helps pay some racing bills. So I better get to bed, and
Right on.
we'll hopefully see you guys at Aaron, I know I'll see you at Putnamville, and
Yep.
Scott, maybe we'll see you at Bloomington on the 30th.
I'll try, man. I told Aaron I've been wanting to make it out to some of your shows. It's been a long time since I've been around wing cars. I'd like to just kind of observe a little bit, just take it in.
They're still wing sprint cars, that's for sure. It's
Yeah.
been interesting to me, just I think with some of the drivers that have come over from the non-wing side of things and some other stuff. Like, there's a lot of people that were stalwart non-wing people that I've noticed have kind of started to follow and become a little bit more open to the wing sprint car side of things. Since like Tyler came over and Wyndham came over.
Well, I'll tell you one thing too, and you hit on it a while ago. I think the money. I mean, I'm not slagging anybody, but there's no money in non-wing sprint car racing right now. I mean, that's just a fact. And they're paying basically what they paid 30 years ago. And that's fine. I mean, that's their choice. And if you guys want to show up for it, that's fine too. But
You can't blame the promoter
nope, you cannot
because
blame the promoter.
I remember some races back when I was doing Ray Morgan's car and we were running the non-wing deal. We were guilty of it.
Yeah,
Hobstot was paying 10,000 to win, and they got like 18 cars. And we went to Danville that was paying 1,500 to win, and there were 52.
right.
Why
Right.
would why would a promoter want to pay big money if he's not going to draw the cars?
No, I agree. I mean that's. I mean, why? Yeah. No, you knocked it out of the park with that. I mean, you're spot on.
So anyway, hopefully
Yeah.
we'll see you at the races soon, and hopefully we can get the old Lamb Excavating, Diamond Equipment, Dirt Perfect, Skills USA, Palmetto Epoxy 77 rolling.
Nice. Well done.
I think we're getting pretty close. As disappointing as Peavey was, like we qualified well on the first night. I think we were 11th out of 44 overall, and we ended up 9th in our flight. But we went out kind of toward the earlier end. We actually went out right behind Boy Wonder, and out qualified him and Sweet and a few other guys that, by all intentions, really probably we shouldn't have been able to go that fast. And then we messed up the setup on the car for the heat race, and I didn't get a start. I mean, Kyle schooled me on the start. That's really what it comes down to. So it's like, well, okay, shoot, we screwed that one up. And then you come back the next night and you're fourth in hot laps. And so you're like, yeah, we got speed off the truck and the driver screwed it up. So I guess the common denominator is I kind of standing in the way of our success, but also reminding myself, like, hey man, like you're racing one race for their 10 or 15.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Nope, that's right.
Wait to judge yourself that hard until you're getting to race more, because you've got the speed and, you know, save a couple maybe bad choices. Or holy cow, Kyle just went around the bottom there. I'm watching highlights out of the corner of my eye, and looks like with about 1 or 2 laps to go, he laced the bottom and drove by Rico to steal it. So big shock. But yeah,
Did he get the left front on the berm, or did he just hug the berm?
Oh yeah, left front was on the berm. Yeah. It got on the berm and the thing drove around the bottom like it was a slot car.
Right.
Which is not easy to do. I can tell you that. I bounced off of that
Well, how fast are you getting into one?
at Knoxville.
Yeah. How fast that car getting into one in Knoxville?
I think gotta be 140.
That's about what I thought. So let's say 130, 130 mile an hour, and you got to put that left front up on the berm, and you got to keep it on the berm to make the thing transfer weight to the right rear, make it dig. That too is a skill set.
I mean, it's basically Chili Bowl, but a lot faster.
Yeah,
A lot faster.
a little bit faster.
But you got the concept.
A lot faster.
You get the left rear in that good sticky black Knoxville dirt that's still hiding down there right next to the berm. And if you don't have the left front up on the berm to get the right rear to stick out there on the slick, you're just going to push right up out of it and then go sliding across the racetrack going nowhere.
Yeah.
But if you catch too much of the berm, you're going to bounce out across the racetrack or go for a pretty wild ride.
Yep.
Well,
but
yeah,
Jeff,
thanks.
Man,
Thanks, Jeff.
Catching up with you, man.
Yeah, good catching up with you too, man. Like it's been a while since I used to be able to come over and hang out with you guys and shoot the bull like this. So hopefully in some of this rambling, somebody finds something worth listening to. And maybe we'll see you again and we'll do some more.
Yeah.
All right, so we're joined by a 5-time Indianapolis 500 starter, Robby McGehee. Now, Robby, the reason why we're having you come on, obviously, I saw you this past weekend at Pevely for the Roll of Outlaw race, and we are kind of joking around because I saw you in the stands, and it wasn't your first time ever at a dirt track, but you went to a dirt race. I think you said like it's been like 15 years ago now, or 20 years.
Yeah, so first time I ever went was, I think, maybe during the month of May, when I was in Indianapolis for
Yeah.
several weeks or whatever. It would have been going back to the early 2000s. And I went out and watched the race, and the joke was, "Oh, go up to the fence and check this out." So, oh, okay, well, I'm going to go up to the fence and check it out, and just get absolutely pelted with mud. So I learned, but it didn't stick because I relearned it this last weekend.
I have that picture. Sorry, go ahead.
We saw you up there in turn 3 but during the feature. You were definitely in the shrapnel zone.
Yeah, I imagine there's probably some sort of strategy on trying to figure out where to sit. When you show up at, right before the race starts, and it's like, oh, look at all these great seats, they're wide open. There's probably some people that know a little bit more than you do. And I did learn that. We tried to sneak up, but it was such a packed race. It was cool. I've driven past that track 100 times up and down 55, going places, but I'd never actually been there. And when we pulled in, I just saw the vast parking lot full of cars. I mean, it's super cool, and just to see the fans out there. It's a passionate group of people, and I was most excited that I got, certain things it's hard to find, at my age, it's hard to find kind of new stuff that you haven't seen before. But at my kids' age, at 15, they're still seeing new stuff all the time and loving it. So I was excited to be out there, spend that time with them, and then get to see a guy that it's hard to believe that a guy goes and wins NASCAR races, runs the Indy 500, and then just goes and runs these races and just wins. And I'm talking about Larson. I mean, it's just, I take that back. I did play golf with him last time they were in for the Cup race, and super, super nice guy, pretty quiet, but what a race car driver. Super cool to see that.
Yeah, man, he is he's something else. And you think you might actually have something, and then he makes a mistake and realizes that he can use a different part of the racetrack or this or that, and all of a sudden his mistake is turned into his advantage. And we have a young kid that helps us. It's actually Paul Dana's nephew. His name's Charlie, and so we kind of introduced him to sprint car racing because he thought he wanted to be a sports car mechanic and was going to automotive tech school. And he's kind of really gotten into it the last 2 years. And his comment to me after the race is, he goes, I don't think I've ever seen anybody that's that good at what they do at anything in my life. He goes, but literally Kyle Larson knows what guys around him are going to do before they know what they're going to do. And I think that's probably an accurate statement. Like, he has a capacity for analyzing what's going on. And if you've ever heard him talk about a race, like, he can go back and recall in great detail what he was doing, what the racetrack was doing, what this guy was doing, what that guy was doing. And I mean, I don't know what to say other than I think he's probably, among a small group of people that are the best race car drivers in the world.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was there for, I believe it was, what was the last one you ran in? It was one of the heats, or the
that would have been the B main. That would have been the B main.
Yeah.
I
got to watch you run some. That was
pretty disappointed night, really. We hot lap fourth quick overall, and so getting ready to qualify, I figured, like, hey, we're in there, and we've got a chance, because usually we only get a green white checker for practice. So whatever you unload with is kind of usually about where you're at. and we unloaded good both nights. The track was a lot different Saturday night from Friday night, and without going into too much detail because you're short on time, on Friday night you were aiming for dark patches qualifying, and on Saturday night I aimed for the dark patches, and the dark patches were not where you wanted to be. So I kind of scuttled my 2 qualifying laps, about knocked the fence down both laps, and it's so tight and competitive in 410 wing sprint car racing right now that a couple tenths can be the difference between being relevant to make the dash and ultimately have a chance to start up front, or being off the back to where you're almost hopeless to make the show. So it was 100% on me. We had a fast race car. The guys did a great job all weekend working in the heat, and the race car driver let them down. And I hate it, but all we can do now is pick up and move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I mean, you probably raced long enough to know that racing's racing. I mean, that happens, and I'm certain the guys probably don't blame you for anything. I think I would love to sometime, I got more time, listen and hear and learn about the strategies when you said the dark part of the track, the light part of the track. I mean, I know we call it the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We consider it to be alive, because a slight weather change can change the track. But I think that's such a the mosquito on an elephant's ass compared to how much the track might change with what you're doing. For us, it changes a little bit and it makes a difference. But I mean, like a dirt track, I mean, it can change. I mean, like they rake it, they do whatever, and it's got to just be really incredibly dynamic. And I'm assuming the quicker you can adjust to it, and I'm assuming it changes a lot even over the race, just with all the dirt moving around. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, I mean it changes lap to lap, especially during a feature when you've got like 24 cars on it. You very rarely come around twice to exactly the same thing that you came around to the lap before. And like you go back to Kyle Larson, that's part of what makes him so good is he can stay ahead of that changing racetrack. And generally speaking, it's you're looking for moisture. Sometimes you might be looking for a hole or something that you can bounce through and get across a slick part of the racetrack and kind of use that texture in the track. Peevely's different now than it used to be. It used to build a big old gnarly cushion on the top that you could lean on, and it doesn't seem to do that anymore. And when it does kind of start to build up out there by the fence, it's not like real uniform or consistent. So you'll have like big chunky slabs and then nothing. And so it's a tricky place, but man, it's a fun racetrack. It's small, it's fighter jets in the living room, and with the banking and stuff, you can let it rip. I mean, it's wide open qualifying.
That is something I would suggest, Robbie. Next time you go, when the feature's over, walk the track, because whatever you think that racetrack looks like standing outside, it is nothing like it looks like when you walk on it after the race. It is amazing.
And I'll do that. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm cut short on time. I just want to end with that was one of the most exhilarating, coolest. I mean, I don't even know how you can't even put it into words. And this comes from someone who's watched a lot of Indy 500s and sat on the outside of the track there, which is also cool. But when you hear that in that final race or in any of the races where there's however many cars wide open on 1,000 horsepower or whatever it is, it's exhilarating. I would love to do it again. Geoff, I'd love to come watch you or hang out with you guys while you're racing, get an idea what it's like kind of behind the scenes the next time, and would love to catch up and talk with you guys again soon.
Cool, man. Well, we'll get some of our dates through the fall here to you. I don't think we'll be in the immediate St. Louis area, but we won't be too far away if you wanted to fuel that ride.
Get Jimmy to go.
Take a jaunt.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Sorry I got to run. Would love to do it again soon, and we'll stay in touch. Let me know, and maybe I'll hook up with Jimmy Kite and drive and find you guys. Haven't had a beer with them for a while, so would love that.